Welcome in, guys. Adam here, the Orlando Drummer, and this is the Orlando Drummer Podcast, Episode 2. It is good to see you guys, and we just wrapped up Member November. It's our biggest promotion of the year. Of course, Member November, I'm talking about OrlandoDrummer.com, which is the one and only sponsor of this podcast. Shocker. It's an online education platform, very much in the style of Netflix. There are hundreds of lessons, drumless tracks, all sorts of good stuff there. It's where all of my 20s went. So that is OrlandoDrummer.com, and we gave away CTM's P2 Explorers, which are Bluetooth headphones. We're going to be rocking those a little later in this episode. So we got a bunch of those hitting the mail here pretty soon. And yeah, we are plugging away. So excited to be on episode 2. And of course, we got young Chris over here. How you doing, brother?
Good. How are you?
Good. We got a whole bunch of stuff planned for the day, I take it?
Yeah, we're going to talk about some stuff. I'm excited. We had a great first episode. All of the feedback from that was awesome. It was good to hear that the audience enjoyed it and they were looking forward to more. So super excited to get back into the studio and start recording again. Yeah.
We wanted to take a little break after the first one too, not only because, remember November, there was 20 pieces of content that came out during that month. We were really, really busy. But we also wanted to gather feedback and sort of see what people liked, what people didn't like. And it was cool getting a lot of feedback and getting more questions in. It was really cool to take a little time, and we intend to ramp up the frequency of these heading into the new year. We don't tend to necessarily do one a month, going to do a lot more than that. But yeah, I wanted to take a little time, so back in the saddle, and so I take it we're kicking it off with some drum news.
Yeah, we got a little bit of drum news.
What we got?
First and foremost, pretty obviously, we have that Earthworks released a new microphone.
Oh yeah.
The Icon Pro.
Icon Pro. So I have the Icon Pro here. Chris is on the SR 314, which is actually a higher end mic than this one. They've had that out for a little while. The Icon Pro is a new mic. It's this one I have here, and I'll throw some B-roll in so you guys can actually see what that looks like. There's two versions of it. It's a USB version, and then they have the XLR version, which is phantom powered. And these things are absolute tanks. It's like if you took a full soda can and crushed it down a little bit. It's super, super heavy, super high quality. If you guys aren't on the Earthworks bandwagon, seriously go check out their mics. They are some of the highest end, just most impressive mics on the market. They make drum mics, but they also make really high end vocal mics and piano mics. And it's been interesting to watch a lot of companies that we work with, CTM and Earthworks as well, sort of making somewhat of a consumer market shift, making slightly cheaper products for a little bit more of like these home recording sort of purposes. And Earthworks, I love that they made like the Ferrari of the podcast broadcasting USB mic, because this isn't the USB version, but the USB version is $349, which a USB mic for $349 is pretty outrageous. But when it's from Earthworks, like, their quality is just unbelievable. Every mic I have from them is out of this world. It is mind-blowing how good their microphones are. It's pretty much the only mics that I use on my main kit. I have a couple of AKG C414s that I still use, but almost across the board, this studio is full of Earthworks microphones, and they're an awesome, awesome company, awesome people. They've treated us really well over the years. So yeah, we got one Icon Pro in here now, and then we'll eventually get you an Icon Pro as well. So we'll have two of these in the studio, and who knows, as we get more guests and things like that, maybe we'll get some more of them. But any of you guys in sort of the vocal narration world, for any reason, this is brand new, and it is top of the line in this particular sector, the world of like broadcasting mics. So yeah, hopefully this sounds good. We've only heard it back a couple times, but we're going to EQ it up, and yeah, I'm excited. It's a sick little mic, isn't it?
Yeah, so far no compression and no external effects on these mics, and they sound phenomenal.
Yep.
They sound good.
Yeah, man.
Alrighty.
Shout out Earthworks.
Next piece of news is that Meinl released a new Chris Coleman signature ride, the 21-inch C² ride.
C². First of all, anything Chris Coleman does, I am into it, man. He's been in my top 3 for, gotta be 10 years now. It's funny. I heard that ride in a video maybe a week or so ago. It's weird because it's not a ride I would personally play, not my favorite, not my style necessarily, but it's also one of those things where he's got such a specific sound. He plays a lot of things that I wouldn't play, like 13-inch dark, heavy hats, I think is what he plays. At least they sound heavy. And that ride, it's definitely not super crashable from what I heard. And it's got a super articulate, like a heavier bell to it. But man, it's you can just hear that it's all him. It's his style, it's his sound, and I love that. I don't need to personally like it or for me to want to put it on my kit to think it's a badass ride. And he deserves it, man. That guy deserves a signature everything across the board. He's the epitome of somebody that appears to be very naturally talented, but matched all that talent with all the hard work in the world, you know? So I don't know. I just love Chris Coleman, and I'd love to play that ride in person too. I probably shouldn't say I wouldn't like it on my kit until I actually have one or at least play it in person. So hopefully, I guess NAMM would be the first opportunity to play something like that. But yeah, man, shout out Chris Coleman. I've met him several times, been to a couple clinics of his. Badass human. He's a super cool guy. Love Chris.
Yeah, it's a dope ride. It sounds, like you said, articulate, super
heavy,
tight,
right?
Super tight. I mean, perfect. In the demo that I watched, it's you can't not help loving the way it sounds, the way he plays it.
Sure.
He's mastered it.
And he doesn't really crash rides either. I feel like if he's going to crash, he's crashing, you know, on an actual crash cymbal. I feel like it makes sense that he wouldn't use it. He's a little bit more articulate, and he plays a ride cymbal like a ride cymbal, uses the bell, uses the flat surface, and then if he needs a crash sound, I don't know that I can remember him like crashing on a ride, just not his style. But what was the name of it? C Squared?
Yeah, the 21-inch C Squared ride.
That's a
Chris
cool name.
Coleman, CC.
Hell yeah. Oh, I get it. I'm an idiot.
And then speaking of top 3 drummers in your wheelhouse, and for some reason in my notes I wrote Benny Greb. But Benny Greb.
Grabby Benny.
A month ago, after we recorded the first episode of the Orlando Drummer podcast, he did an Instagram Live for releasing his new book, Effective Practicing for Musicians.
Man, I need to grab that sucker. Yeah, I mean, Benny is like the Yoda of drums, where it's just everything. The points that he makes are notoriously profound. So I'm sure that book is just full of one-liners where you're like, oh, yeah, that's actually true. You know, I've had one sort of sit-down lesson with Benny at NAMM, not this last year, but the year before. Man, and just packed full of good advice and insightful information. And is this book, I haven't actually seen anything about this, you know, in person. Is the book like, how is it written? Is it like a music book or is it like a novel?
I think he did read an excerpt from his Instagram Live.
So it must have some written paragraphs at least.
Yeah, he did very insightful things about organizing your space for effective practice and understanding, you know, distractions and how to organize your time a little bit better.
Sure.
I think it's more insightful than it is actual instruction.
Sure.
But he lined it out to each part or each chapter has key points at the end of each chapter and exercises for you to try in order to effectively incorporate those key points into your practice.
Knowing Benny, it makes sense that the book would be like hyper abstract, as in it's not necessarily what to practice, but it would be the how or the why, which he would address it from that standpoint, which I love because I've seen him answer questions at clinics before, like how do I get my foot faster? And people want an exercise, but he will philosophically pull out a lot further back than that. And he's not giving you an exercise. He's giving you more of an intention or a mindset or a framework with which to operate in. It's just very Benny to do that sort of thing. So I need to grab that book, man. I'm sure there's a lot of good insights in there for sure, especially in how his brain works, which is clearly he's a unique thinker, how he approaches this instrument. So, man, I can pretty shamelessly recommend that everybody just go check that out and buy it. I don't know if he's selling it or if it's ebook available. Grab whatever version of that it is. I have no doubt that that's worth every penny. Of course it is. It's Benny Greb. You know what I'm saying?
A lot of what he says in clinics and everything like that, it kind of leaves you with a, oh, yeah. You get that reaction out of it because why didn't I think of that? That was so simple the way he described it.
And he's a very big picture thinker, man. That's what I'm saying. He's excellent at zooming out and seeing things from a much larger perspective, and that's why he has a lot of these like soul uppercut sort of points that he'll make. It's very much in his style of delivery. Yeah, man, I need to grab that. Maybe we'll get a copy in here next time. Well, that'd be a fun little segment to pop that sucker open.
I'd love to read that. That'd be good nighttime, daytime, midday reading.
Oh, yeah.
And then lastly for news, I believe as of 2 days ago, the Percussive Arts Society International Convention, also known as PASIC, will be taking place in person on November 10th through the 13th in the year 2021. As we know, this year's convention was held virtually.
Okay.
I didn't attend a virtual event. I don't think I'll ever
cool.
attend a virtual event. But I don't know if anybody watching or listening to the podcast has feedback on that. I'd love to hear it. But
Sure.
I don't know how a virtual convention works. I just know that I'm a fan of in-person conventions. I can't wait for them to come back. And, I understand the reality of today's situation, but...
Sure. Yeah, it's nice when you see the hints of normalcy returning in any degree, right? Everybody's looking forward to some sense of stability, right? Whether it's live music or anything like that. But PASIC is an epic event. And for those that don't know what PASIC is, it's effectively... I don't want to call it exclusively invitation only, but it's like NAMM, but mostly with pros who actually attend it. And there are really, really high level like panels of musicians and audio engineers across the board too. It's not just drum set players. I mean, it's percussive arts, right? So it's all sorts of stuff. But I've had a couple of opportunities that didn't really pan out to do things there. One of them was like a social media panel that I fell through. It was years ago. But yeah, man, I've always wanted to go to PASIC. I know it's like NAMM, but not so mainstream. It's like a little slightly more underground, but there's a lot of badass players that go there. A lot of industry leaders that end up going there as well. So that's really exciting, man. And it's far enough away where maybe we'll go. Maybe we'll go to that one.
Yeah,
that'd be sick.
I actually think that they opened up like an application process to perform or to lead some things. So, and those applications close on the 19th of January is what I read.
Okay, so we got a little time.
So, yeah, we
Cool.
can definitely apply to go. That'd be cool.
Yeah, we'll look into that, man. I've always wanted to go to that, always.
We've got a year.
Yeah, plenty of time.
All right, so that'll end the news segment of the podcast.
Alrighty.
We'll move into Q&A.
Q&A, what we got?
Yeah. So this is the part of the podcast where we answer any question given to us. These questions can come from Instagram, YouTube, or the forums of OrlandoDrummer.com.
Boom.
And nothing is off the table.
Cool. And they can email you?
They can email me at chris@OrlandoDrummer.com.
Cool.
It's the easiest way to get to me. First question comes from Drew Hansen 04.
Drew Hansen.
And he says, what drummers inspire you the most?
Inspire me the most. I think you probably want names. That's what you would want, like list these specific drummers. But I really don't want to do that. I would give you a little bit more of parameters that I find inspiring or that tend to inspire me. Supreme recognizability. Is that a word? Recognizability? That's got to be a word. You understand what I'm saying? Somebody that I can identify them either by their sound or by their drum set. People that do things that are so original it becomes difficult to mistake them. And I'm sure some drummers already come to mind when I say that. If I played you an audio recording of a drummer whose pocket is so specific or whose mannerisms, right? Like the licks that they play, the patterns that they use, their phrasing, their textures. If all of that stuff becomes really, so dialed in that it's just obvious who that drummer is based off of that sound, based off of their musical voice. I think that is incredibly inspiring. Same thing with kit setups. If somebody has a drum set that is uniquely theirs and it's been built and designed around their play style, whether that's for their band or just how they like to orchestrate and move around the kit, I think that's really cool as well. And then I would add to that, what's deeply inspiring to me is sort of like I addressed with the Chris Coleman thing. Like, I love seeing natural talent because life isn't that fair, and there are certainly people who have freakish abilities naturally. But when that is combined with obvious like hard work, that to me is how you get some of the most incredible drummers in the world. It's the natural talent combined with an insane work ethic. And I think that's something that a lot of artists struggle with sometimes. But when you find that rare combination of talent and hard work, when those things blend together and you just get these super freak musicians, that to me is deeply inspiring because it shows me that they weren't comfortable just relying on their natural abilities, that they also wanted more than what nature gave them, so to speak. So I like that combination as well. And whatever drummers come to mind when I describe these things, that should be the most inspiring to you as well, right? These are the freaks of our world that come with these natural talents, the hardest workers, people that are supremely original, supremely creative, very unique, and don't really fit inside of a mold. So for me, those are the most inspiring drummers. And again, hopefully some people already come to mind for you.
All right, next question is from B. Thomas 27.
Okay.
He says, what do you look for in a practice pad? More or less bounce?
See, it's weird with practice. I have so many practice pads. I've got Evans, I've got Meinl, I've got old Remo ones, I've got Movement. I have so many practice pads. I really should do a practice pad giveaway. Maybe we'll do that. It's one of those things where they all have a function. Every single one of them has a different function. So I would say the one you have to be the most careful of are the practice pads that let you cheat. So the ones that have so much rebound and so much bounce that it doesn't even replicate a drum set. I think like a super tight snare drum, it kind of has that bounce. But, you don't want to have a practice pad that's so bouncy, it's kind of like cheating, where you're not having to really worry about your technique because it's just throwing the sticks back up in the air. I don't know how much benefit that would necessarily have. I also think that exclusively playing on like a pillow is kind of silly because that's not what a drum set feels like either. You're not playing 6-stroke rolls on a floor tom all the time. So I don't know that you necessarily need to go with no rebound at all. But I would say it kind of explore the spectrum and maybe even getting 2 or 3 practice pads might be a good idea. A weird one too I can throw in there. I might have this around somewhere. What is it called? Moon gel. You remember those? Yeah. So Moon gel took the Moon gel material and put it in a practice pad. You ever seen that? It was the most dead thing in the world. It was like a black hole for energy. It was brutal. And I think there's a time and place for that. But I would say having a spectrum of practice pads would be the best move, to not just have one and argue that that's the best one. I don't really think that's real. I would say get several different practice pads, maybe 2 or 3, or one of the reversible pads that has the bouncy side and then the dead side. And if you're really into pad work, try and space out your practice among all those different surfaces, because I would hate for somebody to get months and months of practice in on one specific type of pad with a specific type of rebound, only to find that that's not what a drum set feels like, and then you sort of pigeonholed yourself into this weird technique that you had to have for that pad. So for me personally, I don't look for any one thing. I would just say versatility and get several pads. They're $20. Buy one a month for the next 3 months, and you will be set for literally the rest of your life.
And the reflex pad's another one. That workout pad.
That's another one too. Yeah. There's so many of them, man. And yeah, I think the most expensive pads in the world, what are reflexes, like $60? I think Movement
60, 70.
60, 70. Yeah, this is not that crazy of an investment for something that should last the rest of your life. So grab a couple of them. Mm-hmm.
Next question comes from A. Douglas Drums. It's a deep one.
Okay.
When you work alone so much like you do, how do you keep from going into a, quote, social depression?
So, okay. Well, first of all, let me tell you exactly how often I work alone. When I'm at a peak work week for me, if I'm pulling 40 or 50 hours, it is quite literally 40, 50 hours alone in this room. I work from home. My fiance doesn't. So it's pretty normal that I would have an 8 or 10 hour day 100% alone in a windowless black studio. That's pretty normal. And I would say 1 to 2 hours of that might be at the drum set, and 6, 7 hours of that would probably be at the computer. Sometimes I'll go inside with the dogs and be on a laptop, but it is, I've talked about this before, it is undoubtedly a very, very lonely job. It's not one where you can hang out with other people and do this sort of stuff. It requires that you stare at a screen or be at a drum set completely alone most of the time. This is about as social as this job would ever get, is something like this, right? So on my new podcast, it's called All In with Adam. It drops December 17th, which is my birthday. That's the first episode. After a couple episodes in, I'm going to take the Myers-Briggs test, which is a psychology profile sort of test. And that will hopefully offer some insight as to how I'm able to do this. But I think for me personally, the answer to your question is that I can do this because I am deeply introverted. Whenever I hang out with a lot of people in like a big social setting, which I do enjoy, there's only so much of that I can do before I have to take a break from people. And I need a very, very large amount of alone time. It's just part of my personality. And I'm well aware that helps me in this job. Not everybody is equipped that way. And I first learned this when COVID hit. I would have some buddies come over, and they would say things like, man, I'm just so happy to like be around a person and get some social time in and hang out. And that is really hard for me to understand, because I'm like, this has actually been pretty awesome, like not having anybody over for a long time. So it really is personality based. And sometimes I feel like I have an unfair advantage in that, being so introverted, it's really, really easy for me to do these kind of work weeks where I don't see anybody for a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time. That doesn't bother me in the slightest. But for somebody who's not in that position and it does bother you, I would say the move would have to be to prioritize your social time, to be super proactive about spending time with people. Because if that's something that you value, just like I value alone time, some people would have the opposite value, and they would need to hang out with friends. I would say, something that might work in your favor is like scheduling hangouts with friends, like literally making plans a week before in anticipation that you're going to have a long, lonely work week, and that might bother you. And so, hit up, even if it's a guy friend, hit him up, make a little dinner date, or come over and play, what were we talking about this morning? Cyberpunk 2077. Play that video. Oh my God, that looks sick. But, I would say prioritize and schedule your social time, whatever that is for you. I think a lot of people genuinely need that. Most people do. And so, I would say just prioritize it, schedule it out. That has to be the move. It has to be. And if you are deeply introverted and wondering if this job is for you, it is. It is. You'll do just fine.
All right. I have nothing to add to that. That was a good answer. So that's it for the Q&A segment of the podcast. Just as a reminder, you can submit your questions via Instagram, YouTube, or the members area of Orlando Drummer, or you can shoot me an email at chris@orlandodrummer.com.
Yeah, man. Fire them off.
Cool.
All right. What do we got next?
Next, we have Accent or Ghost. So in this segment, I'll present Adam with a largely debated topic among the drumming industry, a new product, or any viewer-submitted content, and we'll get approval, Accent, or a disapproval, Ghost.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so first topic is high snare drums.
High snare drums. That's tough.
Like higher than thighs, just way up there.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I think Todd Zuckerman actually had a great point about this, where he said, think about your kitchen counter. Like when you're deciding how high a kitchen counter goes, you almost want to make it like if you had a knife and you were chopping something like right in front of you. Like if your kitchen counter was 6 inches higher, the angle for the knife is weird. And if it's 6 inches lower, the angle for the knife is weird. And so I kind of think that way. Like if you were building a kitchen, you would have to think about those angles of like, where do you want stuff right in front of you, like food prep, And I think about snare drums kind of in the same way. Like, where do your hands just naturally fall? A big variable here you have to keep in mind is rim shots. Like, do you like playing rim shots? If you don't, then that would definitely change your snare position. For me, I tend to not move my snare that much as I do my throne. I would adjust my throne. So for me, this is just how I personally set it up. I put my snare level with the floor tom, maybe 3 to 4 inches. So if you have the rack tom rim and you put your fist right here, so the rack tom rim is right above your knuckle, then the bottom of my fist would be at like the snare rim. So like 4-inch gap between the top rim of the rack tom and the top rim of the snare drum. That's about where I place that. And then what I do is I basically, adjust my throne to the point where I get a natural rim shot. And I like my hand to be very close to my thigh at the bottom of that rim shot. So when my stick makes contact with the head and then the rim of the drum, I basically like my hand to be like a millimeter above my thigh. Not quite touching, but as close as possible. And for me, that normally means sitting on the high side. But I've also found over the years, you can get used to almost anything. Like if you adjust your throne by 1 inch and then you give that a week or 2 weeks, you'll get really used to it. And then you go back down and then that feels wrong. So for anybody that has experienced that, where you make that snare height adjustment or the throne height adjustment and it feels a little bit off, if you give it time, I swear within like 6 or 7 days, it feels totally natural. And you might find that as you make those adjustments and sort of get used to new heights and positions, maybe you'll find something in there that you like. So I think the name of the game there is just experiment. Don't go for anything too extreme. Just try everything and be patient. Give yourself some time to figure it out. And explore the whole spectrum. You'll find something that's comfortable for you.
So we're going to accent or ghost it?
Just setting them high in general. I'm gonna have to ghost that. Don't do it for no reason. Slow and steady. Don't do anything extreme. Yeah, just putting it high for the sake of being high. That's some cool kid shit. You don't need to do that. I'll say ghost it. No.
We should also mention, too, the dimensions of your body kind of matter. I'm sure
Definitely.
I'm being a taller, lankier person than you. If we did a side-by-side comparison of how my kit is set up to yours, we would see large differences. I tend to keep my throne a little bit lower, snare a little bit higher.
Yeah, just to compensate for your legs, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I should have mentioned that for sure.
So for today's Accenter Ghost, I have a slew of photos in between topics that we're going to show, and they're all from NAMM Oddities. If you Google NAMM Oddities, you'll find this website. It's an individual who's collected some photos from NAMM over the years.
Okay.
So go ahead, you can pull up the first photo from that.
Okay, so I got the first one here. Let's see. This thing, Istanbul. So this is this a variation of the clap stack?
Yeah, I think it is the clap stack.
It is the clap stack.
It's like 5 or 6 cymbals stacked on.
5 or 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Man, okay, so first of all, Carter McLean was where I first saw first person I saw play this, so I know a lot of other people have it. Or a version of it. Does he play Istanbul? Am I remembering that right?
I think so.
I think he does. If not, it's not Dream. It's one of the slightly more obscure ones. Yeah. This thing sounds so dope. It sounds like a sample is what it sounds like. But yeah, I love the sound of this. I think I've talked with Meinl before about if they have any plans to make anything similar, because it's so dope. It sounds really, really cool. I am confused at the physics of it. I don't understand why 5 bent cymbals creates a cool sound. Looking at that, how do you think this would sound? If I was what do you think that sounds like? What would be your guess?
Honestly, I think it would sound like just dropping metal on the floor. But I've heard samples of it, and I think R. David R. made his own version of it, his DIY drum
I bet he
channel.
did, yeah.
And it sounded like a clap, and so I mean, if you want to clap, it's there was an old JoJo Mayer technique to get a clap sound. I think this beats it out. I think this is a lot easier, and it's just one extra hit. It works.
What I love about it is I'm not an electronics person when it comes to actually playing on the kit. I've owned little modules, and what did I have? I had an Octapad for a while. I end up just never using them. I'm really not into that. It's like a different side of my brain, the tech side versus the drumming side. So for me, hybrid drumming stuff, it just doesn't blend that well. I either want to go all electronic or all acoustic, and I'm not good at blending them. So I like this, though, because it gives you a trap snare, but it's still very organic, very analog. So I love this thing. I'm going to give this a heavy accent. This is cool.
Sick.
Really cool. Okay, let's pull up the next one.
Cool.
Square drums.
Yeah, so I think that this photo is from 2008 NAMM.
Is that a 2008?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So it was just an offshoot company that did this, and they made square drums, I guess, for proof of concept.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're functional. I don't know if they sound good, but it's just taking the concept of drums and changing the shape.
Well, the acrylic messed me up because I it took me a second to see what it was. I thought it was normal drums inside of cubes. I'm like, well, what is not cubes, but rectangle 3D squares. And my thought was well, what is the point of doing that? But it's not. It's they took imagine a shoebox and then put holes on either side and then put it there. So the resonant chamber becomes cubed inside of it, right? Man, it's so tough to accent or ghost it because I need to hear what that sounds like. It might sound really cool. It might sound horrible. That could go either way. See, okay, my thought would be that this would not sound that good because of the chaotic energy, right? I mean, how smooth is energy going to be flowing around inside of here? It's going to be very chaotic with all of those hard angles. Interesting. And what's weird is you could have made this out of wood. It would probably look a little weirder. I mean, I get it from a proof of concept point. This is probably super fun to make. A lot of fun. Especially out of acrylic, too, because you get all these weird, back to the cyberpunk thing. This is a weird, futuristic kind of looking drum set. So I'm going to ghost it from an audio standpoint. I don't think there's any way that this was supposed to sound good. I don't even think the people that built this thought it was going to sound good. But from a design standpoint and aesthetics, I'll give it an accent. It's pretty sick. You can make a dope little, make those drum chandeliers. You ever seen those things? You can make something sick with that. Yeah. It's cool. It's cool.
Drum furniture.
Yeah.
So before we get to the last photo, we'll do some topics. The Duelist double drum pedal.
The Duelist. Okay, so I'll tell you what I know about that. I don't know a ton about it. Isn't it like on the return of the pedal, there's a second stroke?
Yes.
Right?
It's 2 beaters in a single pedal.
Gotcha.
Allowing you to do doubles pretty quick with one foot so that you have better hi-hat control.
So it would double your subdivision effectively.
Yes.
Right? So if you're playing 16th steady, up, down, up, down, up, down, it would double that and create twice the notes. That doesn't really bother me that much. I think if you really think about it, the concept of a bass drum is already like air quotes cheating in that you're using technology that you're already over the line where you need this piece of tech in order to accomplish something that you probably couldn't otherwise. Without the return of that spring, you're not going to be able to get a beater, very quickly up and down off of a head like that, because the way that a kick drum is oriented, where it's vertical, you don't have this like gravity rebound situation. It's kind of apples and oranges when compared to rebounding, straight up and down with sticks off of like these horizontal like flat heads. So in my eyes, like you're already using technology to cheat in a weird way. I use the word cheat, not that I think it's cheating, but sort of crossing over the line of like this, of our own biology, right? Your foot can't naturally do that. You need this piece of tech in order to accomplish it. So it doesn't bother me that someone invented something that sort of messes with it. I think the problem that I would have with it is that if you become married to that piece of technology and the things that you play and how you play them, and your skill level and your musicianship, your musical identity is all married into that specific piece of tech, that I don't necessarily love. That's a little too bionic for me, where I would hope that if we take away all of these things and I give you a cajon, or I give you bongos, or I give you a little foot shaker, like, can you still like hold a high level of musicianship without that technology? I think if that's the case, then I think you're free to use it as you want. But yeah, I guess I just don't like the idea of being fully married to that piece of tech. It's a little specific for me. But I'm not mad that it exists at all, and I think anybody should use it if you want to use it. So I'll give it the accent. It's a dope invention. I actually want to know how it works. I don't know how that thing works at all.
Yeah, engineering, man.
That's some wild engineering.
Now we'll do a photo. We'll do the last photo.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is a Vox drum set.
Let's pull this sucker up. Vox. Oh, these melty kick drums. They did this back, what was it, like 60s or 70s? When I went to Memphis Drum Shop, I've been there twice, done the My Cymbal gig. If you ever get a chance to go to Memphis Drum Shop, please do. It is such a cool shop. And it's half a drum shop and half like a museum. There's a lot of gear in there that is not for sale. It's literally just to see. Like they collect there. But yeah, they had several of these. There's also a brand, it started with what? TRI? I want to say Trident, but I don't think that's it. Try something. Somebody in the comments, let me know what that brand is.
Tay? Is it Tay?
No, not Tay. It was TR something. I don't know. We should have researched it. But they a few companies did this. And it's kind of the same as the Square thing, right? Like, I don't know that there's an argument that this is supposed to sound good, but it does look sick. And my thought would be that this was probably born out of the psychedelic era of the 60s and 70s. Somebody was probably tripping and saw a melted kick drum and was like, hey, we could make that. I guess you can. My first question would be, how do you make this? Is it like a mold where it just turns out sort of like what gravity and physics do to it? Or is it intentional where somebody like traced out a weird egg-shaped sort of pattern and then made it? I don't know. I would think the symmetry of a natural circle would sound the best because it would manage the energy in the most like efficient way. But I do wonder how these sound. Every time I've seen one of these, this was at NAMM, but every time I've seen one, they're like antiques, so they're not meant to be played. I've also seen them at Bentley's in Fresno, California, also a dope shop with a lot of stuff that is not for sale. They have some of these as well. They're cool, man. I think it's just a weird, like, freakish thing in the drum industry. So I'll put it in the same category as the Square sort of kit that we saw. I think from a design standpoint, hard accent, super awesome. From a functional standpoint, hard ghost. Nobody's bringing this to a show, but it's cool. It's really cool.
I'm sure super fanboys will hate you, and we'll hear about it, and then it sounds great. It sounds, the kit is unmashable. You can't even EQ
unmashable. It came mashed, bro. It showed up.
Matchable.
Okay.
I'm unmashable. And then the last topic on Accent or Ghost, 2916 time signature.
2916. Oh, good Lord.
I will say, before you start thinking, Pliny came out with a new album or an EP a while ago, and their drummer, Chris, had a video explaining like why 2916 was a good time signature for like groove possibilities. And you can find that on YouTube. Chris is an amazing drummer, real groovy.
Okay.
But it kind of hard to count, kind of a weird number.
A little. Yeah. So let's talk this out. So if you were to 2916. So if you were to try and simplify that, you can't, because you would be in half of 29. Yeah, that wouldn't really be divisible that way. So that is the most simplified version of that you could get. If you bump it up one and imagine you were in 3016, you could simplify that to 15/8, which kind of makes sense. But God, 29/16 notes. So my first question would be, how are you dividing the measure? Probably. Oh God.
Well, it's 7/7/8/7.
Okay. See, that's just a weird way to say 7/7/8/7, because you could also frame that as two measures of 7/8, a measure of 4/4, and then another measure of 7. You could frame it out that way if you wanted to, but depending on how they're phrasing it, the math might dictate that you have to stay 29/16. You know, you get into this like musical elitism territory, and I'm glad that world exists. That is Pliny for sure. That's Chan. That's Animals as Leaders. That's a lot of that stuff. And I'm glad we have people out there pushing those boundaries. But it's also one type of musician you can be. Another type, it's on the total opposite end of the spectrum, would be like a pop country singer-songwriter. And clearly the level of like musical difficulty is not the same. Like technical ability, of course that's not the same. But we're talking about two different types of musical challenges, right? One of them is to write a song that 100 million people will enjoy listening to. That is a very, very tall order. Another tall order of a totally different magnitude would be to write a song in 29/16, right? So this is it's almost apples and oranges. And I think you got to give credit to both ends of that spectrum, because, while Michael Jackson songs are not technically difficult, you can't write that because you're not Michael Jackson. Me neither, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that there are people that do those sort of things. It's awesome. It's not like I can't sit down and enjoy those sort of high level musical executions and writing and all these rhythmic puzzles that people are into. For me, I tend to lean a little bit more towards like the pop side, where the challenge I would enjoy taking on would not be something that is difficult and technical for the sake of being difficult and technical and all of the challenges that come with that. I would enjoy the challenge of writing something that is universally loved. That's a more appealing challenge to me. But I think you got to give credit and respect to both sides of that. So I'll give it the accent just based off of how hard that must have been. That's a lot of thought that goes into something like that. Very challenging for sure. Do I want to learn it? No, I don't want to learn it. Yeah, just levels of nerdiness. That's a good way to say that. Levels of nerdiness. How much of a musical nerd do you want to be,
Yeah, music for musicians, and then there's music for the general population.
Correct. That phrase is really important. Music for musicians. That's the thing. And, I don't want to live in a world without Animals as Leaders or Pliny or any of those. I'm glad there's people that do that sort of stuff. Another version, I'll just give one other example, is like you can find these extremes in all sorts of stuff. Like bodybuilding is a good example, or fitness. Like let's just say we're guys, so we'll talk guys. Like if you and I work out and we were to get into like peak physical shape, there's a certain like level of fitness that would be universally appealing, right? Like a certain amount of muscle, a certain amount of leanness, where kind of most people in the world would say, man, that guy's in really good shape. But then you go to like Rich Piana, Kai Green, Big Phil, like you go into these like roided out, like freakish Mr. Olympia level bodybuilders, And they're not doing that so you think they're attractive. This is like extremism within the sport, right? And so I kind of look at like some of those higher level, like ultra crazy prog metal players as like those guys. Like, this isn't for everybody. It's not supposed to be. It's for people that are into this world. And I think that's cool. I think it's cool that there's that whole spectrum there. Yeah, you just got to give credit to people on either end of that. Yeah, that's a weird analogy, but you get it. You know.
I can say like another analogy too is that if you take like Formula One drivers, for instance, in comparison to your regular Joe with a modded out Subaru BRZ, he's chasing tenths of a second, and Formula One drivers are chasing thousandths of a second.
Yeah.
Whereas musicians to that high caliber are chasing time signatures in 30 seconds and 64th.
Sure. Hyper-specific goals.
Yeah, time signatures that they want to prove that they can do it and also make it sound good.
Yeah. No, that's a good analogy. Yeah. Different strokes,
For different folks. All right, that does it for Accent and Ghost. I think that was awesome.
Okay.
We had some weird ones there.
Yeah.
And that will move us on to Sleeper Spotlight.
Sleeper Spotlight. Let's do it.
Yeah, in this segment, we introduce a drummer that y'all are sleeping on. And we get Adam's opinions, impressions, and maybe even some trash talk.
All right. Trashing everybody.
Yeah. So it's exciting. So you've got some files on your computer there. Go ahead and open up the first by Riley.
Cool.
This is Riley Does Drums.
All right. Here we go. Riley. I play a groove really similar to that. I like that groove. Frankenstein kid. Good, man. Clean. A lot of cool concepts, man. Oh! That was sick.
Yeah.
Really cool.
The kid shreds.
Yeah, definitely a lot of cool concepts in there. Heard 3 over 16 a couple of times and that funky modulation at the end. Also very fast and clean. Reminded me of a sort of a dynamic texture similar to Andy Prado. Kind of in that wheelhouse of like, I don't know, something about like the steadiness of the Ghosts as he moves around, like not a lot of waviness even in those really fast phrases, like kind of bumps to this like a 6 on the dynamic level, like a little louder, but still maintains a lot of that power, really fluent. Man, that was super, super cool. And the kit sounds good. I don't see mics. It's like an iPhone video.
Yeah.
But that kit must be tuned well, man. Those toms sounded fantastic. That was super cool. We got one more from Riley too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is he young?
I think he's like 16.
Oh,
17.
shut up. 16.
I would confirm, Riley. I'm not. Your age isn't in your bio.
Hear those like loud Ghosts, Yeah, man, just clean, very, very clean. So good, man. You know what I love the most about this is like, I don't mean this in like a rude way, but like this is the antithesis of doing a cover. It is you sitting down and talking. And it's not just about chops. It's not just about going fast. Like it's a little beyond that. I mean like the philosophical perspective that I get to hear what you sound like. This is you sitting down and saying something, I really, really like that. And again, not about chops, not necessarily about speed. It's just to hear somebody's organic voice and a flow of thoughts coming out of them in this rhythmic language. I love that sort of thing. Very much of the style of, the whole modern shredder crew, which would be Forrest Rice, Chris Paproda, Andy Prado, Mason Guidry, like that whole crew of guys. There's several others in there that I'm probably forgetting, but talkers. They sit down and they chat on the drum set. I love that sort of style. And yeah, to me, it's like the antithesis of doing a cover. It is not really for your entertainment. It's an expression of thought through the rhythmic language, voiced through a drum set. I love that, man. It's one of my personal favorite things about this instrument is hearing somebody talk like that. So yeah, Riley, you shred, man. That's awesome. I'm gonna check out more of his videos. And he does look younger than me. So dude, you shred. That's awesome. That's a good one.
Yeah, so this is Gareth Grover. He's actually the drummer for punk band Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes.
Carter and the Rattlesnakes.
Really dope.
Okay.
Really dope drummer. Clean and versatile in his skills. And I'm just going to check out his playing. So.
Sure. Okay, first video from Gareth. Those toms sound good. This sounds like a part written for a band or a song.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it sounds like it should have music against it, like it's written for a part. Yeah, it sounds like a chorus or a verse. You can hear something against it. Cool. That was absolutely sick. That was really cool. I don't know what it is that makes it like you can tell that was like a band part or something.
Yeah.
Probably something to do with like how rehearsed it is. Maybe that's it. It sounded so clean. It's like, oh, you're playing something like that, what you're playing already. That was really cool though. Well written too. It was interesting. Very interesting. Let's do Gareth's second video. Back when live music existed. Trapped out. Clean and powerful. Great live player, man. Awesome energy. A lot of musical maturity. Man, definitely like a very seasoned player. You can hear like this veteran quality in some of those things. He's also using some concepts like kick and hand singles between the kick and the hi-hat, like that sort of stuff at high speeds. That's a ballsy thing to pull out live. Like that's a high risk thing to do. It's very difficult. So seeing some of those concepts executed, not in a practice room where you can delete the take if it doesn't work out, but seeing that executed live on stage, to me, says that you're like, he's a veteran in a lot of ways. Because like, I don't even know if I would pull out a concept quite that difficult in a live scenario. I'm like, whew, this could go wrong. But in the studio, I'll do it because I can delete the recording if I fuck it up. But in a situation like that, that's like, man, it's a very ballsy thing to do. I think that guy's been playing a long time. So really mature player with some awesome concepts for sure. And you could hear the dynamics of the solo sort of swell up and down, all very intentional. Man, you found some shredders this week. All these guys were absolutely sick, man.
Yeah, and we talked about versatility just a second ago, but the fact that you mentioned that he's got trap influenced in that solo, he's a punk drummer. All the songs are punk songs.
Interesting. I wouldn't call that a punk solo, but if he snuck it in a punk show, that's awesome, man. Very cool.
Killed it.
Hell yeah, these were sick, man.
So, yeah, and that'll end it for Sleeper Spotlight.
Cool.
We'll have more next time. I'm continuously scouring Instagram and the interwebs to try and find some great drummers. So if you know of any, hit me up at chris@orlandodrummer.com.
Yes, sir.
And I'll give it to you to close out the podcast.
Shut it down. Yeah, man. Well, you know what I'm working on this week? I'm actually working on, other than this podcast, I'm working on Timekeepers episode 5 for a new Watch from 7 Friday. Shout out to 7 Friday. And it's cool. There's a little bit of an analogy in there that I'll share with you guys here. The watch that I'm that I'm doing this video on is inspired by the valve, like a plumbing valve. And I'm sort of working through this analogy of like, imagine what life would be like without certain pieces of technology. And in doing so, I try to compare this to, to the drum set and bring it onto the kit and say, well, what kind of inventions and technologies or components of the kit would we have a hard time, playing the drums without? And it's been fascinating doing like a little bit of a history lesson or some history research this week on different components of the drum set. Everything from the screw, like tuning lugs, like when was the screw invented? 350 BC. That's how long human beings have been working with screws. Invention of the spring, the invention of the mylar drum head, the history of cymbals, which I knew a little bit more about that, but going through different components of the drum set, components of woodworking and bearing edges, and how did people invent and sort of discover some of these technologies and what is it that we take for granted? And my conclusion there is kind of everything we take for granted when it comes to the standpoint of technological innovations that are on the drum set. So it's cool. It's been a little like a good dose of gratitude this week, sitting down at the kit and looking at all these components and going, man, how difficult would it be to be a drummer without any of these inventions? And they're inventions and innovations and discoveries by people that we don't really talk about that much. And, I tend to be a modernist in a lot of ways where I don't nerd out over like drummers from a very long time ago necessarily. But it's interesting because my head this week has been on other people in the drum industry, inventors that have given us things that we really are all guilty of taking for granted. So I just wanted to share that with you guys as we close this out. Definitely check out that episode of Timekeepers. It'll come out in about a week or so. But yeah, it's been really cool this week to sit down at the kit and to feel grateful for all of these people, many of whom aren't alive anymore, who invented or contributed to some of these awesome technologies and innovations, different components on the drum set that we don't even think about anymore, but we owe those people a lot. So it's made me feel really grateful this week. And yeah, some food for thought. Maybe you guys get a dose of gratitude as well. It's been really cool. So yeah, man, I think that'll wrap it up for this episode. I think we're good. Cool. So this has been episode 2 of the Orlando Drummer Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next one. Later.